Are you in a place right now where you feel like your life is crumbling, your reality is falling apart as you know it, and you don't know what to do? You don't feel like there's a way out? What if I told you that this moment right now is possibly the best gift that you've ever received? Hi, my name is Cicely, and I am your host here on the Inheritance Podcast, where we cover a multitude of topics that deal with helping you overcome, either in your personal life or your business life, the things that hold you back from the life that you are destined to inherit. Whether that be past trauma, false core beliefs about yourself, or unhelpful habits that you have in your life that keep you from becoming the person that you want to be and living the life that you so desperately desire. Thanks so much for tuning in. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the concept of rock bottom. And I know that that is really sad sounding. I know that that is something that is not really fun to talk about, but I feel like there comes a point in everyone's life, whether they are dealing with something personally or in their business ventures, where we have to kind of confront the things that we've been doing, the practices that we've had, the mentalities that we've been kind of perpetuating in our minds and that lead to our beliefs and our behaviors. And we have to kind of evaluate them. And sometimes when we are stubborn because we're attached to the things that we're doing and the things that we're believing and it's familiar, oftentimes we kind of pursue those things despite the warning signs of everything around us, despite people who may be trusted advisors saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. You don't need to think that about yourself or whatever. And we just kind of continue down that same path until we find ourselves in a place where it's no longer an option to just continue forward. It's no longer an option to continue in that dating relationship. It's no longer an option to continue trying to keep the business afloat. It's no longer an option to continue to not go to therapy or whatever the case may be, because eventually we kind of like open our eyes and look around and everybody who has been trying to help us and kind of get us to see the light, to make the change, to turn in the other direction, to implement a new thing in our life, they're gone. And it's just us and the circumstance that we have been dealing with. And we are the only people in this place juggling this thing, carrying this thing. The topic of hitting rock bottom can be really dark and depressing sounding, but I am a firm believer that everybody, to an extent, if they actually end up growing and becoming better versions of themselves, it is because of the rock bottom experience. I've talked about this book in previous episodes on this podcast, so we're actually going to use some paraphrasing quotes from this book to kind of divulge into this topic and talk about how hitting rock bottom can actually be the best thing to happen to you, whether personally or professionally. And the book is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I read this book a couple of weeks ago. I'm actually waiting for one of my family members to finish reading it so I can reread it, because I feel like there were things that I missed that I want to go back and reread. This book, it is so great. It is so phenomenal. Mel had a bunch of professional psychologists and psychiatrists involved in the writing of the material, but it all focuses basically on becoming your best self in multiple facets of your life. But there was one particular topic that I had found myself like really gravitating towards, and it was the rock bottom section. Whether that is that you're watching a loved one kind of push themselves towards rock bottom where they're not really wanting to confront certain behaviors in their life, or it's you and you're scared of confronting those things. And then we inevitably find ourselves in this place where we have no other choice but to confront that thing. I feel like a common misconception with hitting rock bottom is that it's only ever associated with like addiction or some sort of like disorder, like eating disorder or mental disorder. There are things that we do in our life, maybe things that we believe, thoughts that we perpetuate that maybe don't seem as severe, but in essence, they are destructive, that have nothing to do with addiction. They have nothing to do with what you commonly would associate hitting rock bottom with. And I'm going to take it apart in this episode in that vein so that maybe you who are listening might realize that there's something in your life that you were believing or that you're doing, and you're getting frustrated with where you're at, not realizing that you yourself may be on a path towards hitting rock bottom, or you might currently be there and you have no clue that you are. And you're wondering why, like, you're still in this situation. You may have been dealing with this for a while, or you may have been expecting more out of your life. Like, say, oh, it's 2025 and you had so much more planned for yourself and it didn't happen. And now you're frustrated. You're like, oh my gosh, it's 2025. 10 years ago, I said by this time that I would be in such and such place. And you're just sitting here resentful towards the circumstances that you're in, not realizing that it's potentially the things that you have thought and believed and your patterns of behavior that have led you here. A lot of people don't realize that they are in a rock bottom situation because of that, because a lot of people really only associate rock bottom with something as severe as addiction. So we're going to talk about it in this episode, and I hope that it will encourage you to maybe digest that a little bit, maybe evaluate yourself realistically in the things that you've been doing, and know that you're not alone, and take action so that you can become the version of yourself that you've always dreamed of being. So Mel Robbins has really inspired me in her Let Them Theory book. We're going to be taking some kind of paraphrased quotes from her book to kind of put things into perspective. And hopefully it will also kind of break down these concepts for you in a more realistic way that maybe you need to hear, because I needed to hear it as well. So I kind of want to talk about my own personal experience, one that I've had recently with hitting rock bottom. And I've mentioned it in previous episodes, but back in 2019, I had been working for a company that I was doing some photography and marketing and a lot of like content creation for, and I was having a really, really great time. And I thought that I would enjoy doing something like this full-time on my own, where I could charge what I wanted to charge. I could work for myself. I could, travel the country. I'd always wanted to travel the country and be creative in some form or fashion. And I decided to launch a wedding photography business. Through perseverance and just pursuing this like out of pure passion, it grew into something to where within the first year, I think I shot like 20 weddings, and that was in the year of 2020. And so it was like a huge accomplishment. I had never done anything like this before. I literally had no idea what I was doing. And then in 2021, I got married that year, and my husband had really seen how hard I had been working. And he was like, you know what? I really think that you need to quit your full-time job and pursue this dream that you had. And so once I did that, I was able to really dive into this company. And any small business owner knows full well that like when you actually get momentum going for your company, it's very exciting and it's rewarding, because your business is almost like your brainchild. Like it is something you're very emotionally attached to. You pursue it out of passion. And so it becomes a passion project. You really throw your entire heart and soul into these things. About 4 years in, I was regularly traveling the country. I was getting booked like in various states, and it was such like an accomplishment. I was so proud of myself. I had never really thought that I would be where I was. And then we moved to California in the year 2023, kind of late in the year. I was hoping that I could kind of like transition my business to being a little bit more like based in California, but I was doing so much traveling throughout the country that I really didn't think it was going to matter that I wasn't getting as much business at home and that my clientele didn't really transfer. Well, lo and behold, like that was, a huge deal. Kind of felt like my business fell apart at the same exact time. Because I feel like I've talked about my business falling apart and people are like, yeah, that, of course, like that would have happened. But putting it into the context of like everything else that I had been dealing with at the time made this probably about 10 times more difficult than it ever should have been. Because when my husband and I moved from Texas to California, we came here without any friends, any family members. We moved to a brand new area where we knew no one. And I was kind of just riding on the coattails of the success of my business to kind of keep me busy and help me process the grief of leaving pretty much the whole life that I had built back in Texas, and hoping that just like the busyness would kind of distract me from any sadness. And right around the time that we moved to California, my family that had lived in Texas that whole time decided they were going to move east. And that made things a lot more difficult because they were even further away from us physically than I think I had originally prepared myself for. And so there was a lot of like elements that added to this big shift in my life that I was processing mentally and emotionally. In the middle of juggling a lot of those personal adjustments, we had some things happen back at home that kind of added to the traumatic things that I was processing. I do firmly believe that what we had dealt with as far as just like completely uprooting our lives and going somewhere where we knew no one and having to start a business over and having no family, no support, I do believe to some degree that that is traumatic. But what happened following that adjustment and that move made things a lot harder, to where I did feel myself falling from the place of security that I had been for over 10 years. I'm trying to decide how much of this I want to share in a public format, but essentially I will just tell you that we had some very close relationships back where we were from. Both my parents and myself left Texas around the same time, and while we were all in the grieving process of leaving our beloved friendships and our relationships there, a lot of things started to unravel in Texas without my family and I being there. Eventually, some very harsh things ended up being said about us that reached our ears. I think a lot of the people back in Texas thought that they had, people that they could privately gossip with, and that was not the case. What had originally been this thing where the relationships with the people that we had thought they were much stronger than what it turned out that they were, which was very devastating because we had spent almost 10 years in this place of developing relationships with people that I don't think I had ever had before. That time in Texas was extremely life-changing, and I will never forget all of the lessons that I learned from there. That was part of the reason why I was so devastated to leave Texas and come to California, was because of the value of the lessons that I learned and the relationships that I had gained. I had just never experienced anything like that. And so leaving and accepting that this was what was next for my husband and I, and same thing for my parents, leaving Texas and accepting that that was what was next for them, it was painful because we loved those people. And it was painful because we cherished our time there, and we never would want to abandon anyone, and we never would want to just like uproot ourselves for absolutely no good reason. Lo and behold, the gossip mill had been running pretty substantially, and things were being said about us that we had never dreamed would be uttered. And it's really hard when you're already in a place of grieving, when you're already in a place of dealing with discomfort and trying to accept what's new and learning to let go of what was once, a part of your life and now it's not because you need to move on. It makes it so much harder when the life that you thought was this amazing thing, it's resenting you. I was already in the middle of dealing with something very painful. I was trying to acclimate myself into a new environment and embrace this new reality that the only person that I knew in my town, in my state, was my husband. It was already hard on top of that to integrate a business into a new community and really push for that to succeed, on top of dealing with like personal things. And then the added layer of feeling like the life that I had loved and was honestly like treasuring in this way that I probably needed to let go of regardless, finding out that it wasn't what I thought it was, and the devastation of feeling like I was gypped for 10 years, or that I didn't see it for what it really was, or that everything that I had put myself into, all the blood, sweat, and tears I had put into that previous life resented me. And I didn't know what I had done to deserve that. And so I'm trying to process my grief, and I'm trying to move on, and I'm trying to keep my heart open for the new things. And then what was old is like it's almost like chasing me, and ruminating on the things that were being said and just questioning myself and questioning my decisions and wondering what I did to deserve this. And all of that stuff kind of culminated and created this monster of a person that I became. We had moved here at the end of 2023, and I had a lot of hopes and dreams for like the first year that we lived here in California. And because of everything that I was dealing with on a personal level, I stopped pursuing all of those things. I became significantly depressed. I stopped really like celebrating my business and promoting it. I feel like bit by bit, I fell apart. It happened in layers. It happened at first with, feeling like a part of me was stripped away with not having any friends and family here in California and having to really rely on my husband. Then the element of what was being said about myself and my family. And because of, this small like tidbit of betrayal that I was feeling, it caused me to kind of become a hermit. I didn't really leave my house. I didn't want to make friends because I struggled with the feeling of distrust that potentially if I put myself out there again, that would just inevitably happen again. And so a lot of my time and energy was devoted to processing another layer of grief that I wasn't ready for. And in essence, I stopped catering to my business and I stopped performing at the level that I had been performing at when I had originally established it. And inevitably my business fell apart. That's when I kind of looked up and realized I was at the rock bottom. There was no getting lower. And that's what I mean by like, there's so much more to rock bottom than addiction and mental health. Like, I do think that is a part of it, but it was just life that handed me rock bottom. And when I realized that I was there, it was so hard. I didn't know what to do besides like just kind of become angry. I was so angry, and I didn't know where to go from here other than to just be mad. And for a while, I just decided I was going to sit at rock bottom until I figured out what was going on. If I were to be 100% real with you, I honestly think that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish what myself and my family went through on my worst enemy. But I know that if anybody wants to be the best versions of themselves and really kind of like, if anybody wants to transform from a caterpillar to a butterfly, like there are aspects of us that have to die and we have to go into hiding and we have to fall, because there are things that I was carrying and I was believing up until I realized I was at rock bottom that I had to let go of. And it was only in the place of rock bottom that I was able to do that. And now I don't even recognize that girl anymore. And it's funny because like that was only a couple months ago. I do believe that everybody can go through this and overcome and transform. And so I'm going to give you some tips on how to do this for you. First, I just want you to take a deep breath. If you find yourself in a place where this is really speaking to you and you feel like you're on the trajectory to finding yourself at the bottom, finding yourself in rock bottom, or if you are already there, I want you to just take a deep breath. Breathe in and breathe out. The whole reason why I told you that story is because I want you to know that you're not alone and there's no shame in where you are. And honestly, the encouragement that I can offer to you is that if you're at the bottom, then you can't fall anymore. There's only one way to go, and that's up. So you can get better and you can grow from this and you can overcome, and it's all going to be okay. Let's just dive right in. In the words of Mel Robbins, or paraphrased, I should say, the first quote is, "When you stop trying to save people, you allow them to save themselves." For me, I was thinking that somebody was going to intervene in my circumstances and make it go away. Silence the voices, silence the false core beliefs. And there is only one person that is going to do that for me, and it's me. And so I want you to know that if you are at rock bottom, if you feel like you're about to be there, there is someone who can save you, but it's you. No one else is coming. No one else is going to save you. No one else is going to be able to make this better for you. and you can do it when you're ready. But know that it is in your hands. When you're ready to do it, you can. Because if I've done it, so can you. We're going to first talk about why rock bottom is a wake-up call. And that is the first element to how this is a gift for you. And if you see me kind of looking around, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I am referring to my notes. Sorry if I'm not looking at the camera like 100% of the time. And if you're listening on podcast, then you wouldn't know that until I said anything. So anyway, in Mel's words, struggle is the greatest teacher. No one can truly learn without experiencing difficulty firsthand. And like I said, in my rock bottom story and how I got there was through difficulty and struggle, but it is the absolute best teacher. I don't think that I would be where I am today. I wouldn't have the perceptions of myself and the belief in myself had I not gone through this season of hitting rock bottom and learning to climb out of it. I believe that for you as well. So when everything falls apart, you finally see things for what they are. Your choices, your habits, your patterns, your behaviors, whatever. Ultimately, we are the person who is in control of the trajectory of our life. And so if we find ourselves in a rock bottom situation, if we find ourselves on the way to hitting rock bottom, really the only person that we can hold responsible is ourselves. And this is not talking about children. If you are an adult and you have a child that is dealing with this, and Mel talks about this as well in her book, this is not about children. If you're the adult in this situation, then you are responsible. But if we are talking about adults, if you are an adult and you have the freedom to, which you do if you're an adult, you have the freedom to control the outcomes of your situations, and you are the person who is responsible for said outcome. When I finally hit rock bottom and I was most angry, it was when I didn't really have anything to hold on to that I was familiar with. When my business fell apart, I felt like that was like the last straw of really losing myself and being the most frustrated. And really, I can't blame my outside circumstances for the reason why my business was not performing at the level that it used to. I chose to allow myself to get distracted by outside voices, and I chose to allow my emotions to dictate my decisions and what I chose to do with my future. And therefore, what ended up happening was I wasn't catering to my business in the way that it needed in order to be successful in a new environment. And so it just fizzled out. Of course, I'm simplifying it for the sake of this podcast, but because my business was part of my identity, because it was like my brainchild, it was my passion project, it was extremely devastating. And I don't want to dismiss that. It was extremely devastating to realize that my business was not successful anymore. Us moving to California and feeling like we were going to be okay financially was all based off of my salary that we were making at the time in Texas from my business. And so there was a lot more to my business falling apart that had less to do with my identity than, I'm chalking it up to be. It was extremely stressful financially to wonder what we were going to do in order to survive and pay our bills. And we later figured that out as I accepted what was happening. Ultimately, I allowed it to happen. I didn't foster the care that it needed. It would be like if I was taking a plant and, repotting it in this new pot because it needs it, and then choosing to not put it in sunlight, not water it, not anything, and expect it to thrive in a new environment. That just doesn't work. That is part of the beauty of hitting rock bottom, is it is a wake-up call in the sense of there is no one here in this situation. No one else is in rock bottom with me, because my rock bottom is mine. It's not mine and then everyone else who is saying these things about my family. It's not my husband is there. I mean, by default, he's having to bear some of the brunt of my emotional turmoil of being in rock bottom, but he's not in it with me. He can't fix my business situation, or he can't fix my identity, being wrapped up in my business and having so much self-worth wrapped up in that. He can't fix that. It's mine to fix. And whatever that looks like for you, whether that is that you are battling an addiction issue, and it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. We've talked about in previous episodes how sitting on Netflix all day long, or Hulu or whatever streaming service you're using, and throwing your life away, just streaming hours and hours of things because you don't want to confront issues in your life, or you don't want to put yourself out there, or whatever it could be, that is an addiction. It doesn't seem as severe. Or pornography, that is another really detrimental thing that you can be wasting your mind and your time and your energy and your heart on. It can become extremely destructive, and allowing those patterns to continue and not confront them will put you in a situation where you are in rock bottom. It's statistically proven that pornography ruins relationships with people. It gives you poor expectations of what love actually is. And so if you expect to have a successful marriage, but you are addicted to pornography, then you'll find yourself in this place. And the same goes for eating disorders. The same goes for anything else that is unhealthy and it's not making you a better version of yourself. The warning signs were there. It was just, did you ignore them? And it is a gift to own that. It sucks. I get it. It's not fun to not be able to play the blame game, but know that you are not going to move up out of rock bottom the longer that you try and find someone to point the finger at. Like, there's no one else. If you find it really hard right now to just accept the responsibility, then just look at it for what it is. Look at what is happening and realize that it is falling apart and that you're the only person there. And if that's the only thing that you can do, then that is the perfect step in the direction of healing and progress and getting out of rock bottom. The next element to this, we have our wake-up call first. We realize that life is falling apart, that things are slipping out of our fingers and we cannot do anything about it, and there's no one else there to save us. We are the hero of this story. Now we need to realize that settling and excuses is what is keeping us here. People avoid pain. All marketing, all ads that I see, it's all about alleviating pain and bringing pleasure back into the forefront of our minds. That's what we're all known to do. We want to run from pain and run to pleasure. But realize that when we avoid pain by making excuses or waiting for the right time or blaming circumstances, that does absolutely nothing other than buckle us in another layer or put the heavier chain on and cause us to stay right where we're at. It's almost like handcuffing yourself to the thing. So let's say that you have an eating disorder, okay? And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I'm doing the motions. But making excuses and saying, well, I know that this is causing, people to walk away from me because they're concerned that this is going to lead to more damage to me physically and they don't want to watch. But I'm just so used to doing it this way and I like myself this way. I'm scared to try a healthier version of stewarding my body, whatever. Making those excuses isn't going to make all of those people who walked away from you because they set a boundary for themselves. It's not going to make them come back. You're literally handcuffing yourself to whatever it is that you don't want to let go of in order to do what? Stay in the situation that is not helping you, stay in rock bottom for the sake of comfort, for the sake of what you know. We're watching your life fall apart. You're watching your life fall apart. You want to stay there and you want to make excuses and settle. Same thing for sitting on the couch and not doing anything productive. Same thing for feeling like your spouse is slipping through your fingers and you're becoming more like roommates than you are lovers. And you're not pursuing the relationship like you used to, but instead what you do is you handcuff yourself to your current situations and your behaviors and your mentalities. And you say, well, it's too hard. I don't have time. I'm tired. We're low on money, whatever. What is it that making excuses is going to do to make the situation better? Because if you don't stop making excuses, the situation is only going to continue down the current trajectory that it's on. It sucks to stop making excuses because then you have to open your eyes and you have to say, well, crap, I got to do something about this. But I want you to know, and this is the harsh reality from Mel's book, The Let Them Theory. You need to realize no one is coming to fix it for you. You are the hero of your story. You can also be the villain, but there is no external hero coming. So if you want to handcuff yourself to all of your comfort because you want to ride the comfort train and make excuses for where you're currently at, you need to realize that the only person responsible for it continuing to get worse or you continue to just stay at rock bottom, that's on you. No one else is coming to help you get that business off the ground. No one else is coming to help you repair your marriage. No one else is coming to raise your children. No one else is coming to help you get off your butt and go to the gym. So you have to realize that making the excuses, it's not doing you any favors. No one is going to come and knock on your door and say, hello, I am here to fix your problems for you. I am the savior. It's not happening. And that's what happened with me. I sat in my rock bottom scenario and I listened to all of the external voices and I allowed my entire identity and all of the fabric of who I knew myself to be completely torn apart and unraveled. And I sat there depressed, destitute, and bitter, hoping that someone would just find me and book me on my business that was no longer running advertisements because I couldn't afford it. And my website is really not being pushed anymore. And I'm not posting on my Instagram, just hoping someone will find me and it'll all be okay. And I'll get booked and I'll be distracted. And I'll find friends magically because I'm not leaving my house and I'm not going and connecting with people. Like, oh, it'll just happen. It'll fall in my lap and then everything will get better. That's what I was doing. But guess what? 6, 7, 8 months down the road, nothing had changed. And I was more miserable and I was more upset at life. I was more bitter and angry than I had been. Settling and making excuses isn't doing you any favors. So what do you do then? You have to shift from being the victim of your life to being the owner of it. When you believe that you're the victim of your life, at least like this is what I've kind of noticed about myself. Like when I believe like, oh, well, my life is really only what it is because like that's what other people say that I am, then it's not possible for me to look for another solution. Why would I need to look for another solution if my life was dictated by like what others thought and believed about me? Of course, then I would handcuff myself to that and then I would ride that out for the rest of my life and become nothing more than what others thought and believed. That is what the victim mentality perpetuates. If life gives you lemons and you're the victim of your life, then you can't do anything with that other than be sour. Everybody who's ever overcome the rock bottom situation in their life, everybody who's ever become anything beyond what they were handed in life, realized that they're not a victim of their life. They are an owner of it. And it's not about what you are given in life. It's about what you do with what you are given. And we all come from different backgrounds and different demographics and different levels of, success or poverty or whatever that looks like. And it's up to us to do something with it. But if you believe that you're a victim of your life, then you'll just handcuff yourself to your inaction and settle and make excuses and wait for someone else to come and save you. And trust me, that's not going to happen. You have to shift your mind from being the victim to being the owner. And rock bottom forces a choice. You either stay stuck or you take radical responsibility. I love that. That's what I mean. You can't live in the in-between. It cannot be, I'm a victim and I'm an owner. It's no, one or the other. It's either I am stuck and that's all I'll ever be and this is what I'm choosing, or it's to hell with that. I am the owner. I don't know how many people listening or watching are familiar with Lewis Howes, but I love his podcast, School of Greatness. There's this one person that he has had on his show that they regularly talk about manifestation and the power of all of that, and that it's all rooted in change in your mind that leads to change in your body. He talks about how it needs to be such a shift in your mind going from the victim to the owner. You need to be able to remember what you were doing, what you were going through, what you were wearing, what you were feeling in that moment when you make the shift in your brain to go from being the victim to the owner. For me, I remember exactly where I was because my business had kind of fallen apart and I had been going through months and months of just terrible depression and feeling so incredibly lonely. I had decided to take up a part-time job at a coffee shop in the hopes that it would bring me business for my business and friends. And I just was so frustrated with the fact that I'm still dealing with elements of this depression and elements of not really knowing who I was. Do I give up this photography business and just like ride the coattails of being a barista forever? Do I go and like work at another store? Do I go back to school? I was so overwhelmed. I was so frustrated. I sent a voice memo to my dad, and my dad sent me a voice note back, and he was like, I love you and I will always support whatever you do, but I don't know why you don't just start like this marketing company. You are so gifted in this area. I don't know if it's because you don't want to do it. You just have to make the choice to pursue it. And I guarantee you, like, the doors would open for you. I remember when I first heard it and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to start a new business. I had just watched my old one fall apart. It was so discouraging. I'd already been carrying like so much in my body and in my mind about that. And then like the next day, for whatever reason, I'm getting ready to go into another shift at the coffee shop. And I'm so furious that I'm working a part-time job. And I've been a business owner for 5 years. And I just looked at myself in the mirror, and I had been on the verge of tears that whole morning. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I can do this. Why am I not seizing this moment? This could be something that could get me to the life I've always wanted. I thought it was my wedding business. This could be something to get me even further into the realm of life that I've always wanted. Why am I feeling sorry for myself? And it was in that moment that I changed my mind from being the person who's waiting for someone to come and save me to being the person who's taking control and saying, this is my life. And it changed my mentality substantially. It changed my posture towards people. It changed the way that I even worked at the coffee shop. I kid you not. It's so effective. And that's why you have to shift your mind. And it honestly needs to be a very powerful moment to where you can reference exactly what you were feeling and know the contrast of it. Allow that force of a choice with rock bottom to happen, to propose to you that this is what staying stuck looks like, and to propose to you what radical responsibility will give you. And you have to decide in that moment. And so, referencing Mel's book again, we're going to paraphrase a quote. You cannot change people and no one can change you. Only you can decide to act. No one can change us. My dad was so sweet with his voice memo saying like, I don't know why you don't do this. And I had heard him mention, starting a company, I think 3 times. And every time he mentioned it, I would reject it. And you know what? That is my right. That is my choice. I don't have to do what he is telling me to do. No one can make you change. No one can tell you, hey, you need to go to the gym instead of starving yourself or binge eating. You need to have a healthy relationship with food. And then all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. Like, it doesn't work that way. You can influence people, but you're not going to change based off of somebody's opinion. You change because you want to change. You don't get to be mad at the world. You get to be mad at you. And the person that you can become, the only person that you're in competition with, the person that you can fight for, is you. If you want to be frustrated, if you want to compete with someone, if you want to overcome, it all needs to be the old version of you. So you're fighting the old version of you. You are competing with the old version of you. You're just trying to be better than yesterday. No one else can force you to change. You have ultimate autonomy over your decisions, and that is a beautiful thing. At the same time, you are solely responsible for where you're at if you choose not to change. Someone can say and influence, yeah, you should start that business like my dad. But I can't be mad at my dad if my business doesn't just appear simply because he said it should. No, I have to be mad at myself. I need to fight with that version of me that chooses to not act, that chooses to make excuses, that chooses to believe that she's the victim of her life, rather than grabbing life and saying, I'm the owner of this. I can bend it to what I want it to be. I can make it what I want it to be, but nobody else is going to do it for me. It's up to me. And understand that that's where your power is. And when you do, we get to move on into the next phase, which is the rebuilding phase. So taking action from the lowest point, which is obviously we're already at the lowest point, so we're going to start there. A big key thing for you is going to just be, number one, to just start. The magic of rebuilding and the magic of actually developing momentum in anything. The magic of it is just to actually start. Nobody's exempt from taking the first step. Obviously, it can be overwhelming to enter into this place where you're like, okay, I am the owner, I can make this happen. And then you're like, oh God, how do I go from making no dollars to 7 figures? And it's like, that's not what we're trying to accomplish. What we're trying to do is the first thing. start the Instagram. Like make an Instagram profile or just show up at the gym. And that's where the big magic is in that. I even love to go into ChatGPT, honestly, and I will use, those AI tools to give me like a simple yet effective to-do list in order of like small to large, like building blocks of things, and type in, if it's a meal plan or if it's a workout plan, or have ChatGPT tell you like how to build an Instagram profile from 0 followers to set yourself a realistic goal to 100, and have ChatGPT show you how to use the platform. Like use the tools around you to do one small choice at a time and follow through. Just follow through with that one choice. We're not trying to go from 0 to 100 tomorrow. It's not like that. And honestly, when you're coming out of the rock bottom, like lull that you've been in and that rut that you've been in, it is overwhelming to imagine anything but one step at a time. Over time, you can develop the momentum of it being a new habit in your life. Same thing goes with thought patterns. You can rewrite your thought patterns and rewire your brain one thought at a time, and making that decision that day. Today, I'm not going to allow myself to mentally spiral into thinking that I am stupid, or, whatever it is that's holding you back, whatever thought patterns that you are dealing with that got you into this rock bottom place. We're going to tackle one thought at a time. Mel has a lesson on small actions, and she basically says, motivation won't save you, action will. And I love this because I'm a big motivational person. I would love to become like a motivational speaker. I would love to have people that I mentor on a regular basis. So hopefully soon. Taking action and starting this podcast and having my Instagram and my YouTube channel will put me in those places. But that's what this all means, is I can listen to motivational speakers all day long. But if I do nothing with the information that I am putting in my body and that I'm downloading and absorbing, if I don't put legs to that motivation, and if I don't create a plan that I can actually implement in my life, then nothing that I'm being motivated towards is going to come to fruition. I mentioned in another one of my podcast episodes about how important it is to just like journal. So if you are struggling with like an eating disorder, or you are battling addiction, or you are trying to like rewire your brain and unlearn some things mentally, you need to be journaling. Write this stuff down, document things. And that can be something that's small that eventually like can become a frame of reference that can add up to taking responsibility for your life and moving gradually towards a new reality for yourself. And so if not journaling, then do like a vlog, put your phone up and film yourself like day 1, not smoking cigarettes, whatever that looks like for you. You are the only person who can really change the outcome, because you're the only person who can change the situation. Start small, take it one day at a time, and know that the momentum will build. Rock bottom is a gift. It can be the best thing that has ever happened to you. And I will say, I have hit rock bottom at least 3 times in my life, possibly more, and I didn't realize it was rock bottom. But I know for a fact, the recent 2 that I have dealt with were relatively close together in time. I think within like 5 years, I hit rock bottom. And I was dealing with like different elements of my personal journey, and some of my professional development was like wrapped up in that. So it ended up being like a really complex 2 rounds of hitting rock bottom. I look back on those times and I say every time, as I've said, I would not wish this on my worst enemy, but it's how it made me who I am today. I wouldn't undo it. I don't think I would be the person that I am sitting here today without that experience, without that hardship and confronting those things and realizing that like no one is coming. It's me. I have to do this. I am the hero of my story. And that is a beautiful thing. It's really hard for people to accept. It's hard to not want to just point the finger at life and say that that's the reason why you are where you are. But everybody has the same ability to make their life beautiful despite what they've been given. And they can overcome despite what has been done to them or what has happened to them or what they've witnessed in life. Everybody has the ability to overcome. And I would not trade what I have learned. In my times of hitting rock bottom, even though they were one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, I wouldn't trade it. The fact that you're here and you're listening to this, I want you to know that my heart is with you. But I want you to know that rock bottom is a gift because it strips away what's not working. And a lot of the things that we are doing when we find ourselves in the pit of rock bottom, we are clinging to things that are not working, or we're clinging to things that are hurting us and things that are holding us back, whether that's people in relationships, like if you're in a toxic relationship and it's tearing you apart and it's making you a shell of who you are and you don't want to confront it and it's too hard and too painful, or it's your thoughts about yourself, or it's the people that you're surrounding yourself, like your group of friends or the business that you're dealing with. Rock bottom strips that away. It gives you the ability to let it go, and it leaves you with the space for growth, and it leaves you with the elements of who you are and the elements of your life that can work for you if you allow it. It's hard. It really is hard. I don't want you to feel like I don't care. I do. It's just, there's so much more on the other side of allowing rock bottom to do its work for you. From Mel, again, in her book, The Pain is Necessary. Let yourself feel it and then use it. The things that we experience in life that lead us to this place of rock bottom can not only be a breeding ground and a developing ground for the tools that we will acquire to apply in the life that we can create, that we've been so desperate for and we've desired for ourselves all along. It can also become a method that we use to teach other people how to do the same. That's why I'm here talking to you. Your struggle now can become someone else's survival guide later. A lot of the reason why I'm here is because my parents did that for me. Mel's book did that for me. The people that I started to really choose to listen to on YouTube and kind of fill myself with healthy content, they were my survival guide. This is it. This is your moment to make the decision of if you actually want it and if you're going to create it, because it's up to you. I don't think anybody who thinks about how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly thinks about just the death aspect of the caterpillar, and they mourn the caterpillar and they, say, oh, poor caterpillar, that's terrible that, the caterpillar basically dies. No, we think about the butterfly, because something that could only crawl was stuck to the surface of the ground can now soar and fly. And it only comes through this death experience of going into this place where they have to hide and allow the stripping away of what was hurting them and holding them back to fall away and to allow the new growth to take place because they made the choice to enter into that. Anytime one person flourishes, when they have this overcoming season, it's this mass celebration of this new person that we've all witnessed transform. And I want that for you. I want that for myself, and I want that for all of us. And so know that as hard as it is to be in rock bottom and to accept that and to take responsibility and to not settle or make excuses and to implement the small changes and allow the momentum to build and be consistent, as hard as it is, it's so worth it. So something that I want to ask you in order to motivate you into thinking about what's next is this. What is one thing that you can do today to take ownership of your life, however small, to just start, to not settle, to not make excuses? What does that one action look like for you? And the final thing I want to leave you with before we wrap up this topic is this. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's where the real you begins. This is a hopeful time. It's a new time. It's a rediscovery. It's a time where you're going to see a stronger, more smart, more creative version of you than you've ever thought. And just like I said in my story, you're going to look back and you're not going to recognize the person that you were, because the person that you are now is completely different. Stronger, better, wiser, smarter, more humble. Has a deeper story, more compassionate, whatever it is that it looks like for you. I believe in you. You can overcome. This is not the end. it's the beginning. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. I hope that this was encouraging for you as I shared my own personal stories and provided some very inspiring quotes from Mel Robbins. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description of this video and this podcast to Mel Robbins's Let Them Theory book for you to read on your own, whether it's listening to on Audible or reading in print. And I hope to read comments from you about how this has impacted you, how you hope to see a new level of transformation in your life. And I can't wait to watch you flourish and inherit the life that you've always desired and deserve for yourself. Again, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you have not already, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, would you leave me a comment and a review that really helps push this content out to other people who have not discovered this podcast yet? And I cannot wait to see you next time.